Investments YouTube channel, Quality Homes for All.
Welcome to another edition of AvranceCorp Presents. I am Kenai Andrews, your host. Thank you so much for stopping by and checking us out. On our last episode, we traveled to the West Coast over in Squamish, BC, where we got the lay of the land from realtor David Weeb. But I'm so proud that we are back in the GTA, the Greater Toronto Area, as we have a heavy hitter in the area on as a guest today. You've seen his many videos on YouTube describing all the angles regarding real estate, covering all the regions from Peel to Durham to the Toronto, etc., etc. So without any further ado, let's bring on Mats Moy. Mats, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate the time. I know it's always busy, particularly in real estate. How you doing?
Doing well, man. Doing well. Living the dream. I cannot complain. Things are going well.
I'm sure they are, particularly with the YouTube channel, which is I'm sure taking off. Just going on there. So much information that you provide on there. But let's start off with the basics here. How did you get into real estate in the first place?
Yeah. So you know what? I'll try to make a long story short, but essentially, prior to getting into real estate, I was into marketing. I ran a digital marketing agency catering specifically to roofing contractors, and so that's a lot of my history. A very successful business, successful so much so that a lot of the proceeds from that business took me into where I should put it, and the likely avenue that it was just inevitable. It was real estate, and so I got into real estate, starting investing in real estate. I started off as an investor, purchasing multifamily properties and so on and so forth. And after a while, we started accumulating several properties, which ultimately led me to, you know what, I might as well get into this. I'm good with people. I am good with numbers. And ultimately, this is probably the avenue for me to jump into. And so I got my license, and I started quickly just learning about different markets and what's happening here, what's happening there. And it ultimately led me to starting the YouTube channel, where I'm actually helping and educating people, because I find that there's a really big disconnect between what the information is and how to properly convey it to everyday people, because it's challenging, right? And I am blessed enough, I'm grateful enough to have an ability to just break things down in a very simple, easy to understand manner, so that the everyday person can say, you know what, this makes sense. Oh, you broke it down very clearly. And I see it all the time in the comments of a lot of my videos and people reaching out. So that's the how I became a real estate agent and how I got into real estate story for you summed up.
And you forgot the gift of the gab as well. Very eloquent. You got the vernacular there that really really catches people's eyes there. The ability to convey information elegantly and precisely. So let's test that elegance with some hard questions here.
Sure thing.
Starting with what we saw in 2025 in the GTA. I mean, looking at the newspaper and stuff, it was a challenging year in some respects. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so one of the things that I've learned over the past couple of years, and just looking at numbers, is that the headlines, the stuff that you see on TV, whether it be CTV, City TV, CBT24, all those channels, they're generally an exaggeration of what's going on. That's what kind of makes the news, right? But when it comes down to the majority of the people, the everyday people, it's not always what you see on the news that's actually happening on the ground. So I'll use 2025 as an example. A lot of the news, the headlines, the media will tell you that it was a horrible year in real estate. And it's not to say that it wasn't bad, right? When you compare it to some of the other years, but bad for who, right? That's kind of the question you have to ask yourself. Who was it actually bad for? Was it bad for everyone, or was it bad for a select group of people? And so the people who are generally in trouble, who were generally in trouble in 2025 and even leading into 2026, are the people who essentially over leveraged themselves during the peak of the market. So we're talking 2021, 2022, because a lot of them they locked in super low interest rates. We're talking sub 2%, some people even close to 1%, locked them in. But even then, at peak prices, things were already tight as it is, right? Because yes, you have low interest rates, but you have high prices. So affordability wise, maybe I could afford something then, but as we all know, interest rates change. And so when they start changing, things become a little bit more difficult. And if I'm already tight back then, and now I'm going 1, 2, 3 years at the minimum, right? Maybe 5 years on a renewal for my mortgage, I start to look at the numbers, and the numbers no longer make sense. So that's essentially what's been going on in 2025. And coming into 2026, we're going to see more of the same. So those are the people who would look at the market and say it's absolutely horrible, nothing is selling, and doom and gloom. Those are the people who are in trouble.
All right. And, it's very interesting you say that because, you go on YouTube and you get, like you said, a different assessment from maybe the dramatization that we see on the big channels there. So if that's the case for 2025, what about 2026 now? I know we're early. We're not even, I guess we're just approaching the first quarter, but what are your thoughts on the new year?
Yeah, so there's a few things to really be paying attention to, well, at least that I've been looking at over the past couple of months. I myself, I'm out there, boots on the ground, doing showings with buyers. People are still buying, right? People are still getting their homes sold, but the approach to both are very different from what we've seen over the past couple of years. So for buyers, for example, buyers, they have the luxury of time. They have the luxury of negotiations, putting in conditions that may seem absolutely absurd, right, to add into their offers, and they're still being accepted. I'll give you an example. We have a buyer saying, I'm going to put in an offer on a property and put in, 15 days conditional on financing. Like that's a long period of time, right? But those offers are still getting accepted despite the long conditional periods. So these things are still happening. And on the seller side, the properties that are still presenting themselves well, right? The properties that show up well online, the properties that are priced well, that are staged, that might have some really good marketing. Those are the properties that are still selling. So when buyers are going out there and they're viewing a couple of homes, there's usually those homes that stand out. And those are the homes that are still moving. So it's not to say that things are slow, right? The expectation from buyers is different than it was before, and the expectation from sellers, from a lot of sellers, they're still lagging behind reality. So when you combine those things, sellers are expecting more, and well, no, sorry, buyers are expecting more and sellers are also expecting more. So there's like a almost like a disconnect between the two. There's like two extremes, and it's taking a while for both to kind of meet in the middle. So that's what I'm seeing more of at the beginning of this year. One big metric that I'm paying attention to is active listings. Active listings, if we are looking at active listings year over year for the past, let's say, 4 years, going back to 2022, we see this happening. It's just climbing, meaning there's more and more active listings hitting the market at the same time. Last year, this time, there were, a certain amount. And now this year, we're expecting it to increase even more than last year. So something's got to give. Something's got to give, right? When it boils down to it, it's either sellers, well, the buyers have the leverage. So if we're really thinking about it, the sellers are going to have to become a little bit more realistic with their pricing. And these are the sellers that don't necessarily showcase their homes properly. They still think that, when I bought this house, I just walked in here and I paid even more than what they were asking for. I didn't have to do much. Some sellers are still living in that time, whereas that's not the reality of what it is today. You actually have to put in some work and prep work, presentation, and make sure that it's priced accordingly, all right, to make sure that your property actually sells. So it's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time. So going into the spring market, the busiest time in the whole year, that's really going to tell us what the rest of the year is going to look like.
All right. So while we're waiting for everyone to kind of meet in the middle, as you said, what's happening to rentals during this time?
What's happening to what? Sorry?
To renting.
Rentals. That's a very good question. You know what? When I've done quite a few leases last year specifically, and even comparing it to this year, it's getting tougher and tougher to find really, really good tenants. And based on a lot of the stories that you actually see online on the news, landlords are terrified, absolutely terrified of just getting the wrong tenant in the property, because that can be a complete nightmare scenario. I'll give you, you know what, maybe I shouldn't give you this example yet because things are not finalized, but I'm going through a nightmare scenario with a client of mine where, essentially the tenant has decided to stop paying their rent, and they're going through, the whole process, legal proceedings, and so on and so forth. And so landlords they need to be extremely mindful. And tenants, it's becoming increasingly challenging for them to find places because of the level of the hoops that they have to jump through in order to essentially satisfy a landlord and make them say, okay, yeah, based on the documents, we'll go ahead and take you. There's a lot of fraudulent documents out there. You have to be very mindful. Due diligence at this stage is of extreme importance. And so that's the rental market in a nutshell right now. I'm not sure if you were asking about price or more so just the play field, but that's what I'm seeing right now.
That was a well-rounded answer. Basically, it's difficult for both the landlord and the tenant to kind of find the appropriate accommodation that they're looking for. There's problems on both sides. So thank you for sharing your analysis on that. Let's take a closer look at one of the cities that we both have an appreciation for, and that is, of course, B-Town. Brampton. Shout out to Brampton Mayor Patrick Brown. Has a lot of stuff on his plate, most certainly with the the shutdown of the Stellantis plant over there. Give us a closer look at Brampton, what you're seeing there, any trends that you're seeing. What were the prices there pre-COVID to now? Give us the whole kit and caboodle.
Yeah, for sure. So Brampton is one of those areas that it's changed quite a bit over the last decade, decade and a half. And so as a result of that, a lot of the pricing has come down from the peak, from the 2022 peak. Pricing from in this region specifically has come down quite a bit. It's one of the areas that has taken one of the biggest hits in terms of pricing. And I really want to boil that down to, like, I live here, right? So I drive around all the time, especially in some of the newer subdivisions, and you'll see, like 5, 6 cars in the driveways, and and you can easily identify what homes are rentals versus what homes are not. And I think that plays a big factor in the overall sentiment about Brampton. I think it's the probably the city with the most amount of rentals in the whole of GTA, and it's not a good look, right? It's not a good look. A lot of people who purchase in a Brampton, they purchase with the whole rental idea in mind, but a lot of landlords don't do it correctly. They cut corners, and that has a negative impact on the overall perception of Brampton. And so when you look at it from a pricing standpoint, this is probably one of the cities that has taken, again, one of the biggest hits. We're talking close to 20% in value from the peak of 2022. But overall, Brampton, if you look in the right areas, you have some really good homes. You have some detached homes that are probably on the more affordable side compared to some of the other cities on the west end of Toronto. Always an area that I look at when looking at affordability, because once you step outside of Brampton, it becomes significantly more expensive. And so it's definitely a place to consider, but things have to change here, right? Things have to change. Rules have to be enforced, and the city is doing some stuff on the back end to make sure that the rules are better abided by. And so I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful. Let's just say that.
Right. We both remember the rooming house fire situation there that
Yeah.
they had and other situations. Um, so, yeah, good to hear your thoughts on that. I guess transitioning forward, it is an election year in the city of Toronto. So I would be remiss without asking you some thoughts on uh, the city that Canada revolves around.
Right. Right on.
And in particular, the condos, because you just produced a condo video on your channel talking about the Vaughan condos in particular.
Yeah. Yeah. So condos is it's a market in of itself, right? Throughout the whole of the GTA, I spent last Saturday touring quite a few condos with some clients of mine looking to purchase a condo. Again, the sentiment here overall is specific types of condos are just not in demand. People just do not want them, right? And so during the whole pandemic boom, a real estate boom, a lot of condos that you see today, they're shoe boxes. They're just way too small. They're not practical for the everyday person to go ahead and purchase and live in. So a lot of these condos are just, nobody wants them, right? No matter what the price, practically speaking. Of course, there's a price in which somebody will say, okay, great, I'll take it. But overall, there's just so many of those smaller condos that people are just shying away from, right? The other big thing is maintenance fees. Some buildings, you can look at a building, it looks great, it's priced at say 300,000, but then you look at the maintenance fee of $1,000 a month, and it's like, wait a minute, right? So there's just so many different factors that play into condos, especially in the Greater Toronto area, that people that are looking to get into the market are just not wanting to deal with. They just don't want to do it, right? For them, it doesn't make sense. And so for those types of condos, it's becoming increasingly difficult for them to even sell, at whatever price point that's currently on the market. So you'll see some of them sitting on the market, 60 days, 90 days, 100 days, terminated, and then put at a lower price. And then the cycle continues, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, terminated, and then again in a lower price, right? When you start to see that, you can clearly see that the sentiment is being shared across the board. Nobody wants these things. Now, what do you do with them? They're already built. What do you do with these condos going forward? And that's one of the biggest issues that we have in the condo market right now, especially for people, again, who bought 2021, 2022, specifically investors who thought they could buy those, rent them out, but now the math no longer works, right? You were able to cash flow and make a little bit of money on your condo with rents being high during the time, and now rents have softened quite a bit. Now the math no longer works. Why am I going to hold this condo if I'm not making any money on it? It's lost so much in value, and I'm going to have to pay for it going forward. And this is where a lot of the collapse and a lot of the pressure is going on. Landlords, investors, people who bought thinking the market was going to continue going up.
We're here on AvranceCorp Presents talking to realtor and real estate YouTuber Matt Smoy. You can check him out on his YouTube channel, also mattsmoy.com, his website. All right, Matt, very interesting stuff on the condos, and I hope that Mayor Chow was listening to that. It is an election year for her. She was able to hold the line on the property taxes. I think it was 2.2%. Kind of had to wait till the election year to pull that one off. But what about the external factors that can affect real estate, Matt? So, for example, we had the food professor, Dr. Sylvain Charlebois, on our first show, actually, and he gave us a good outline of just how, things like food inflation, gas prices, uncertainty can really affect the market as well. Like, if I'm, I could have the money to buy a property or a place, but if my bills are going up, my car insurance is going up, my food, all these other second complementary pricing, and I don't know if I'm going to be employed by the end of the year, those things can be a big factor too, no?
Yeah, absolutely. I think two of the biggest factors that are affecting the general outlook on the real estate market, one of them, most people know. The second one, maybe not so much. But the second one, I don't think people talk about enough. But the first one, tariffs. Trump and his administration has definitely they've had a huge impact on how the general population is thinking about real estate and making big lifelong decisions. I have a friend who recently lost their job as a result of being easily replaced, which leads me to the second thing, which is artificial intelligence, right? AI has been a game changer for a lot of jobs. People are losing them left, right, and center because they are being taken over by artificial intelligence. And that leads me to that friend that recently they had been working, everything was fine, and all of a sudden they get the call and they say, hey, you've been replaced by artificial intelligence. So that much uncertainty, not knowing that just one day, all of a sudden, your job has been taken over. There's no real solutions that are being provided right now to give people assurance about their futures, right? And so when you throw in these, just these two, just to name just a few, right? There is a level of uncertainty to where people just do not feel comfortable enough or confident enough to proceed with a real estate transaction at this stage in the economy. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, and then we just saw, obviously, the war in Iran now, just playing with oil prices now, And just another thing for people to psychologically get concerned about. Um, so let's try and save people some money here. Let's go off here on a positive note here on AvranceCorp
Yeah.
Presents. What can buyers or sellers do to save money, in the process of buying or selling a property?
Yeah, for sure. Great question. Something I have conversations about with my clients all the time, which is great. For buyers, a few tips for them. First things first, what you want to do is to be prepared, right? A lot of buyers, they see stuff, they like stuff, they go for stuff only to find out that they can't afford said stuff. So it's a really good idea for you to properly prepare yourself prior to even going out and seeing what's available. So having a conversation with a mortgage broker, all right, and be mindful as to which mortgage broker you're actually going for, right? Because they're not all the same. They don't all do the same things. You really want to find a mortgage broker you find reputable, knows what they're talking about, so they can get you pre-qualified, pre-approved. Okay, so that's probably the biggest thing you can do. Not only that, there's all types of accounts that you can set up from now, and I'm assuming I'm talking to the buyer who's already kind of gotten the ball rolling. But if you're thinking a couple of years down the line, there's accounts that you can set up today, and even if it's not, a couple of years down the line, you can still save by setting up specific accounts today. If you're not sure what accounts to use to set up, you can go ahead and visit my YouTube channel. I got tons of videos on those. Otherwise, for sellers are the people who need to do the largest amount of work in order to accomplish their goals today, because we are generally across the board in a buyer's market. So buyers have the leverage, which means sellers, you need to work a little bit harder to get it done. And it's not to say that you won't get it done. It just needs a bit more work. So prep work, making sure that your home stands out from the crowd. And it's a good idea for you to even go out on the weekends to some open houses in your area, in your neighborhood, so you can see what you're actually coming up against. And try to essentially remove yourself from you being the owner of your home and try to look at it from a buyer's lens today. It's going to be completely different for you because you obviously have the bias that it's your home and your home is worth X and so on and so forth, but you really have to remove yourself from that positioning. Second thing is being realistic with the prices. I know your neighbor sold for $2.5 million, during the COVID. Those prices were absolutely absurd, and we are in a completely different market today, right? So definitely assess what's actually happening in your neighborhood, in your area today, not 2-3 years ago prices. Those are probably the biggest two things that sellers are struggling with in this day and age. And so those are the two things that you should focus on to make sure you save the most amount of money. Because the mistake that a lot of sellers are making is pricing high just to kind of see what happens. But ultimately, they end up cutting their prices and lowering them. And that's normally an indication from the buyer's eyes. It's not always, but buyers looking and seeing that you've cut your price over and over and over is like they become prey almost, right? They see this stuff and okay, this person, they want to sell now, and I'm going to give them an even lower number because I know they want to sell. That's the lens of a buyer today. So just be mindful of that. If you price it right from the beginning, right from the jump, you position it well, it shows great, you'll get a really good and high price for your home.
Matt Samoy, realtor and real estate YouTuber, mattsamoy.com. Thank you so much for coming on. We'll have to leave it there for now. Let's bring you on later in the year and get an update.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me on, man.
You as well. All right. Take care.
All righty.
All right. There he goes. Matt Samoy. Again, you can check him out on his YouTube channel and also on his website, mattsmoy.com. Again, full-time realtor giving us some solid information for both buyers and sellers in the greater Toronto area. All right. Well, that will do it for this edition of AvranceCorp Presents. Thank you so much for stopping by and checking us out. I am Kenai Andrews. So for the team here, enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you right back here next week. Take care.